Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Milburn School District 24 Board of Education special meeting. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Voss?
Present.
Mr. Coleman?
Present.
Mr. Guziak?
Present.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Pederini?
Present.
Ms. Roberts? Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comments? Action items. Approve the purchase of the EdRed renewal membership in the amount of $2,100.
Can you explain some
Sure.
of the, I read through it, but I'd like just how we're using it and all of that type of thing. It seems like it's its own little group that helps with legislation and things.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's another lobbying group for suburban school districts that, so we pay to be part of this group, and they hire a lobbyist to be in Springfield and to keep track of legislation, and when legislation happens that that would impact us, they advocate for us. So there's a group and a board. The school board is invited to attend the meetings if you'd like, and you should get, once we get set up, you get an email and information that they put out. And so the reason they're a little bit different than, say, the IASB, the Illinois School Board Association, is that they focus specifically, it's a smaller group and it's focused more on the suburban school districts. So things that impact downstate, there's sometimes is a little bit different angle on the suburban school districts that they would advocate for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a general question. We have a number of items here, a number of expenditures, and the question I always used to ask is, do we have the money? And it's not impacting anything else in a negative manner?
So yes, we do have the money. If we didn't, we certainly would not be asking for these items here.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just to add to that too, in the next meeting, we'll go over the budget in more detail for the upcoming year, and what that will show you, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is that the budget's balanced. So meaning that we have more revenue than expenditures.
Sure. Okay. All right, thanks.
Sure.
Are we gonna ask, we're gonna ask about all, I can ask about all. What is the purpose of the F-250 pickup?
Sure. So the purpose of that we have a truck at both schools, and we use them for plowing.
Okay.
So the F-250 at the middle school has pretty much exceeded its life. It's
Okay.
kind of on its last leg here. The tire, it's rusting out, and since we do our plowing in-house, we need a truck to do.
Okay. So are we going to be able to then take the previous vehicle? What will be the fate of the previous vehicle? Are we gonna trade it in as part of the payment, or
So
is it too far gone for
it's
that?
kind of, what I'm hearing is it's a little too far gone. So another thing that this truck has on the back of it is a salt spreader, and that's the reason it's rusting out a little bit. So the thought was, one option is to keep it, and then continue using that as the salt spreader and not putting it on the new truck to prolong the life of the new truck. Also, this amount here that is listed is on the higher point, because we work through a consortium and try to get the best rate possible. However, what I learned is that we're waiting until about October for these trucks to become available, and while they don't have an exact price yet, they're giving this estimate that it's 23% more than what the trucks cost last year. So I just kind of,
Bumped it up.
this is the high end if, with not having a crystal ball.
And I would just say that truck in the middle school is gone. It's bad. I looked at it when I was.
Well, yeah, I mean, my
Taking
question
it
is,
off.
are we just gonna, it's like buying a new car. Are you just gonna, take the old one in and use it as part of the down payment, or what's gonna happen?
Yeah, all I'm stating is I looked at it with the same kind of scrutiny going, is there anything left on this? It looks bad. I mean, it's kind of like this. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
We're going kind of on all of them. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? I'm sure he's gonna explain them all as we go through them one at a time, but if you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I took us down that path.
No, that's all right. I mean, we're gonna do it anyhow, so.
Yeah.
Okay, the contract with the Little Heroes,
Yeah,
I went through it kind of quickly. I didn't see any numbers associated with it. I mean, I could have missed it. I mean, I was a little short on time today.
So down at the bottom, possibly the last page, Exhibit A
Okay.
is the hourly rate.
Okay, so there's an hourly rate, and then for how many hours, or what,
so for physical therapy services, we don't know how many hours we're gonna need at the beginning of the year.
okay,
So these would be IEP minutes that are decided with the IEP team. We anticipate using her about 2.5 days, Adam, would you say? So we try to keep it 2 days to start with,
okay.
and then if we need to extend that, we will, but, that's controlled by the IEP minutes.
Sure.
So,
Okay, I get it. And I guess I missed that rate, and I don't have my right, I don't have
It's
the right
$85.
glasses. I'm sorry?
$85 per hour.
Okay, thank you.
It's very reasonable, actually. I know it seems high, but it's very reasonable.
Thank you.
Any others? Don't hesitate to ask questions later if something comes up as he explains them, but can we have a motion on the first one for the purchase of the Ed-Red renewal?
I move to approve the purchase of the Ed-Red renewal membership in the amount of $2,100.
Second?
Roll call?
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Bouzier?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts? Yes. The motion passed.
Approval of the super eval in the amount of $3,695.
So there was questions last time about some of the language, so he clarified that on the new contract, he was open to it, he said, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the question, I believe, was it all inclusive, or do we have to buy a license for every
For each
one? He
of
said,
these.
no, it's a 1-year license, it includes the superintendent evaluation and the 1-year license, and then anybody else you add on to that was for the administrators.
Yeah, I saw in the agreement, it talks about leaders,
Yep.
ones who set it up, and then participants are these others. But it says the number of leaders and participants would be detailed in a service order. So did they give a service order? Is that what, I mean, the contract is not the same, but is the one that you sent out in June, is that considered a service order? With that estimate? And I don't wanna beat this, but what I don't want is for us to get into a situation where we find out we didn't do one. And it just wasn't clear to me in that agreement. Because when I was looking for a statement like, leaders are able to set up the evaluations, this is, there could be 5 licensed leaders. Just looking for some kind of verbiage that
talks about the number of leaders that are allowed and then the participants. Because to delineate between those two roles, I would think, at least in my experience, one's licensed, one is not licensed.
I reached out to them today because, for the same reason.
Okay,
And I ended up speaking with Brian Bailey, is he your contact? He's like for this region. And this was more about how many actual evaluations you can do throughout the year. And he said, typically it's set up for 2 evaluations per year, a mid-year and an end year. But then I said, well, we need to do one like retroactively. Can we do that? Because we're talking about this past year and then this year moving forward. And he said, yeah, that'd be fine. They can do like a drop-down menu, just change the year 21, 22, do his eval, switch it back to 22, 23, and then moving forward.
and then.
So that was a little more specific. He said no extra cost on that. And then he said, hey, have Jason call me and when we're ready to go.
So that's one aspect, but Jason wanted to use it for others in administration.
Yeah, this was the only thing I
That's
asked
the question that I think
about, yeah.
remains open, and that would be the leaders, right? So in Jason's evaluation, the leader would be a member of the school board, and Jason would fill it out as a participant. For the administrators' reviews, Jason would be the leader, and then they would be participants. So typically, that's where you would get into the licensing. Did he address that at all?
That's the way he explained it. I guess I'm not following. I'd have to have the.
So how many licensed leaders can there be? So in instance of your review,
Well, it's the whole school board, so that's
Okay.
7 people.
so that's a leader. Could you be a leader?
So I
And
have to
use
be a
it
leader to do theirs, so
to-
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't see any provisions on here. It explains the role of leader versus participant. And it says the rights of them, I think, are detailed in the service order. I think that's how it's stated. Service orders, yeah. So in talking about service orders, that's under section 2.2, under the agreement on the first page. And then talking about authorized users, that's section 3.4. So 2.2, 3.4. I just don't want us to get into a position where we find out it cannot be used in a way that we are intending it to be used. And we spent $3,695 to perform a review on one person. That's all.
No, this is the tool that you will use as well, right?
That's
For
the
all
intent.
the teachers.
No, all the administrators.
All the administrators rather is what I meant, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's no specific language as to how many leaders there are or defined in any other way? I mean, if it's a contract, then it should be stipulated. There will be, I don't know, 7 leaders.
That's what I'm used to seeing.
That's, yeah. And if they're not running their contracts to be specific like that, we should really be asking
I
some
think-
questions.
Yeah, this is like an agreement, right? A
Yeah.
subscription agreement, and they say that basically the costs and the roles, the users and leaders permissible, are written up under service orders. So I can reach out to him if that's okay? Ryan Bailey,
Yeah, I'll give you his number.
is that okay? I don't wanna keep dragging this on, but I've just seen this happen before where you buy a subscription to something and you cannot use it as intended.
If it's different though,
Sean, you're asking the right question.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, just from a contract standpoint,
Yep.
I mean, it's not even meeting the criteria of being specific
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Could we vote on it saying that we will define those terms? What's gonna happen is we're not gonna be able to move forward on an evaluation. And that's like the whole point was we wanted to, this is supposed to be a tool to give Dr. Lynn something useful and tangible and real. If we drag this out, then we're still not honoring our role and responsibilities. So could we say that we approve it with the stipulation that we verify it can be used for
8.
principals and vice principals as well. Is that too messy?
Well, it would be, because once you approve it, then you approve the expenditure, and I understand that you feel that you need to move on with the evaluation, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that we're buying something and getting what we think we're getting.
Okay, so doing something like that is impossible. It's not
Yeah, I don't
possible to
think so,
approve it
because
with stipulation.
if we're only able to evaluate Dr. Lynn, does it make sense to spend $3,695?
Well, I'm saying
That's
is,
not the point though. I would pay the difference if it's different. I explained what we're trying to do twice, and so I understand what you're saying about the contract language maybe is not
Did he
clear,
give you a service
clear
order?
enough. What's that?
Did he give you a service order? Is that what came back in June?
No, whatever I got, you have.
Okay, that's an agreement.
Right.
Service order was shared back in June. Right, June 15th, you get sent out. My assumption is that what pasted at the bottom is a service order. That's an assumption. But I really don't know. See, look at, yeah, platform fee includes the use of the platform and accounts needed for one evaluation.
June was June what? I apologize. Thank you.
So there's a superintendent license,
This is
one included in that. Provides accounts for the superintendent, executive assistant, district clerk, and all board members.
Includes licenses.
And then includes license evaluations for central office administrators.
So that's
tier
all
one, so that
admin,
would,
right, that he would do?
I'm assuming the 7 would be the board members.
Yeah.
So again, that would be evaluating Jason. There's a platform fee.
Can you put that back up? Jason, thanks.
So superintendent license, if that superintendent license, which says 0, means that you could use it for all the administration, then we're good. But they say superintendent license rather than leader license. And is that considered superintendent a leader? I would assume so. And I would assume that the central office administrators, tier 1, also mean leader. But I'm looking at licensing fees for each member here to perform an evaluation. So that tells me there are other fees here. I'll call him tomorrow and I'll see if I can get clarity on this. I think it's 2 different questions here. If we can only evaluate you, and it costs $3,695, does that make sense to the board?
No, it does not.
And so
So
that's what
there's
I
two
don't want.
price-
I don't want us to be trapped. Even if we can evaluate you twice, I don't know if that makes sense.
Obviously not, but, so what that wouldn't make sense the way it's written, what you're saying there would be that much, because you can buy the evaluation for, the total was 2,200 or something for the first year. So if you look at how it's broken out, to evaluate a superintendent would be 1,800.
Plus there are
Plus-
7 licenses at $250 each, which I'm assuming represents the board members. So that tells us there are additional licensing costs for people who will be
No,
performing
those are
evaluations.
the 7 administrator license, central office administrator license. That's not the board. This is included in the superintendent evaluation.
So who are all the central office administrators then? Because to me.
Carly, Ben, Jake, Adam.
So would they're
Gary?
entitled then to evaluate others on their staff?
No, oh no, no.
So then as a person being evaluated, there's a licensing cost.
The $250.
So I don't see the alignment there to that service agreement or the subscription agreement talking about the roles of leader and participant.
I beg to differ. This seems so, I guess,
Well, we can put it up for vote.
I guess I'm not like as like legalese as you are. It just seems,
Now, we can approve the money, it doesn't mean he has to spend the money. So we can approve the money and say, let John
Get
check this
clarity.
out tomorrow, be satisfied, and he calls and says, hey, I'm satisfied, you can spend it. Or we can say, we're gonna put this off till later. So, those are our choices. And just because we approve spending the money on this, doesn't mean he has to spend it.
And we can put a stipulation in there.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can attach
We could- we
conditions
could-
to it.
Move to approve the
Amend.
purchase of super eval on the amount of $33,695 if it permits superintendent to perform evaluations on administrators, and it permits board members to evaluate the superintendent.
Which is exactly the question that I asked him, and he said, yes, there are no additional fees. But
Okay. Then why isn't that language
that,
clearer?
I don't know why the language isn't clear.
That's,
It's a good question.
just trying to listen to what Sean's coming up with.
Yeah, no, it's
And
good.
then answer the.
And he appreciated the feedback last time. He said, yeah, you're right, that wasn't as clear, and I'll try to make it clear. So if you want, talk to him, help him with
Yeah.
that, to say, listen, this is where I'm coming from, and as I read this contract,
It's
this
not
is
there.
unclear to me. Could you please change your language? in
And I
your
think
contract?"
that would be in a service order. That's
Yeah.
what the subscription agreement is saying. That those details would be in a service order. Maybe what's pasted here is a service order? I don't know. So I made the motion.
Did you get that, Veronica?
No, vote, can you do this? If
I
that
move,
includes evaluating.
I move to approve the purchase of super eval in the amount of $3,695 if the superintendent is permitted to evaluate the administrative staff and the board is permitted to evaluate the superintendent under the terms of that service order.
Service order is equivalent to contract.
Yeah. So you've got your service agreement and then basically.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry, I've just been here too many times.
Got it, Veronica?
Yes.
Okay. You have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Roberts? Ms. Goss?
yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Guziak?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
The motion passed. The amended motion passed.
Thank you. Approval of purchase of thought exchange renewal in the amount of $15,000.
I like the idea of seeing what we can do in the future, buying the license with, that's a good idea, but it's definitely paid for itself, I think. Building trust with the community, so I think we've all seen it as a good tool if you wanna keep using.
And to echo Jim's question earlier, like, there's money for this, that's a big chunk of change.
It is, and we're looking at possibly writing this into next year's grant. So there's monies that, when we get federal grants like Title I, Title II, Title IV, we have a hard time finding the right ways to spend that money, and I believe this is one of the ways that we could do that. So that would help.
Is there any translation option with the thought exchange?
There is, you can check that, there's all kinds of languages
Yeah, okay.
within it. So when you get it, if you notice next time, and maybe I should make a note on that to send out, you can check Polish.
Yeah, that'd be kinda cool, 'cause I think we probably are growing in our
Yeah.
English. Even if they speak English, it would be much more comfortable if they could read it in their, their
Right.
first language.
Right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that'd be, I think, something to highlight.
I don't know how many languages it translates, but there's quite a few.
Yeah, that's cool.
Definitely more Spanish, Polish.
this is for 1 year,
1 year.
and how many times do you think we will use that over the course of those 12 months?
Probably about 10.
10 times.
I tell you, I joked on the price the first time too, but I think it was well worth the money. And I rarely say that about anything.
And there's always a commitment to be able to communicate with the community, and this is, if you don't have a means to do so, you're failing, you know, every time.
And you're really meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
To just get them flexibility, to not have to show up here, but still feel their voices heard.
Give them the opportunity for feedback. You can see here an example, small room, up to 5 leaders. So there's a good example.
Can we get a motion on this?
I make a motion to approve the thought exchange renewal at the amount of 15,000.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Petterini,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Boss,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
The motion passed.
Approval of Stephen Johns as business administrator.
Nope. Skip one.
Oh, I did skip one, sorry. Approve the 3-year contract with Groot.
Okay, so we got a request for proposal for, that Carly arranged and sent out for our waste pickup, and Groot was the lowest bidder. Do we use Groot now?
We
Or-
do.
We do.
Yes.
So I think only 2 people put in a bid, and Groot was lowest.
Yep.
So we use them now, we don't have to change anything.
Mm-hmm. And we're happy
It's
with
great,
it.
and we're happy enough with it. It's picking up
It's
garbage.
either done or not done,
It's
yeah.
done.
I mean, if it wasn't done well, it would bother you.
That's true, very true. If they didn't come on time, the biggest thing with garbage pickup is getting them to come when it's not parent pickup or dismissal time, drop off in the morning, so. That's sometimes a little bit of a challenge. Other than that, once they figure that out, the drivers do not want to come to
Yeah.
during those times. Sit in the traffic line.
You get a motion on this?
I move to approve the 3-year contract with Groot Recycling and Waste Services as stated.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Petterini,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Boss,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen.
Yes.
The motion passed.
Now approve Stephen Johns as business administration consultant at a rate of $80 per hour for up to 100 hours for the 22-23 school year.
So when we I'm losing my language, it's been a long day. When we move from Adam, or from Elizabeth to Adam, and from our tech,
Joanne.
when Joanne retired, we had them available to us for a certain number of hours. So we'd like to do that again with Dr. Johns, so that if Carly has a question about the budget or something, that she feels free to call him up and say, hey, can you help us with grants, for example? Because grants can be a little bit tricky, and there's a lot of nuance to them of writing it, how do you put it in, how do you get it to be approved. So we'd like to be able to call him up if we have a question and have him help us for at least this year, up to 100 hours. If we go more than that, we'll have to come back to the board. If we go less than that, we anticipate going far fewer than that, but at least we have that availability if we run into a need. So that's what that is there for.
This is, he's aware of this, and Carly's aware of this, and they're both okay with that?
Cheaper than a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's a good way to look at it.
I think he got the comfortable chair, so I think we should give him the $80 an hour.
don't know if that was it, but yes, okay.
After I left, so.
All right, can we have a motion on this?
Move to approve Stephen Jones as business administration consultant at a rate of $80 per hour for up to 100 hours for the 2022-2023 school year.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Guziak?
Yes.
And the motion passed.
And now on to the purchase of a Ford 250, F-250.
So, we talked about it, we want a new truck to plow snow. The other one's getting very sketchy.
What is the year of the old one, or the one we're replacing?
07, 06, 07, somewhere in there. I really don't know, but I think it's in that range.
Okay.
And plow trucks, plowing is hard on trucks, hard on equipment,
I know.
because you're going backwards, forwards, so the transmissions go out. And
Yeah.
you're pushing.
How is the current Ford that we replaced a few years ago, how's that holding up?
Good. We haven't had any issues with that.
Okay.
That's been a great truck so far.
Okay.
That's been 5 years. 5 years.
It's been,
Not, yeah, I don't think,
Not that old.
I don't think it's 5,
no.
3 maybe?
Four.
Yeah,
Three,
maybe
Three,
or
four, something like that, yeah.
One other thing to add with the current truck that we have at the middle school, so it has the plow on there, and because of the wear and tear and salt, there are holes essentially in the plow. So we look to see if we could just have the plow repaired to get as much life out of it as we can. And just given the state of the front of the truck, the foundation of it, the company that we went to said that you couldn't even repair the plow. You couldn't add extra metal essentially to the plow. It just, the truck isn't strong enough. Which means that if we don't get a new truck, then we'll have to rely on other things, Bobcat or other tools, but which wouldn't be as efficient.
Yeah.
Well, my questions are really related to whether we need the truck or not. I mean, that's pretty apparent. But you did mention having a separate salt spreader. And my experience has been that it's the salt and the equipment that's on the back of it, the salt that gets into the bed, that's what really causes the damage over the long run. So having a plow truck at 60,000, say, makes sense, but are there any reasonable alternatives to spreading the salt without screwing up another new truck?
So one thing we would like to consider is keeping the old truck simply as the salt spreader.
And you had mentioned that, but this thing is as far gone, frame-wise, is what it sounds like. Is once the frame goes, I mean, that's it, it's
Gone.
you're pretty much screwed. Okay, that might be a discussion for another time, whether we can mount a salt spreader on that, or if there's some alternative. We have tractors, don't we?
Yeah, but the tractors aren't that effective as a salt spreader. We have a salt spreader on the tractor here,
Okay,
which rusts out the tractor, of course.
okay.
But that's not effective. That can't do a whole parking lot. We have to hand feed the salt in there, which causes
Oh, yeah,
injuries.
that's, yeah.
It's
There would be no,
too small.
there would be no time for that.
No, it's too small.
Okay.
So you need a truck and you need an F-250 because you have to have a suspension, heavy duty suspension,
I
enough
get
to
it.
hold all that weight. That's why we have to go up to a 2,500 or 250.
Does 60 grand include the plow setup and the spreader, or is this for the unit itself?
The spreader we're okay on. We don't need a new spreader.
Okay. How about the plow?
The plow we need.
So so the truck, an estimate based off of the anticipated increase from the last year's truck is about $57,000. the plow would be another 3,000, so that's where the 60 came from.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And again, it's quite possible that the truck will be less than 57,000. We're going to look at a state bid, different consortiums.
And that sounds familiar, that's kind of what we did last time, there was some kind of grouping or something that,
Yep.
Government agency.
Right.
Something, okay. Thank you.
We get a motion?
Move to approve the purchase of a Ford F-250 truck not to exceed $60,000.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Buziak?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Approval of the addition of a payroll backup trainee.
So we talked a little bit about this at our last board meeting, having somebody available to do backup, and I talked about giving someone, a different pay scale for somebody currently on staff to do it. But when Carly and I talked about it later, I think Carly suggested this. It's better just to, when someone is doing payroll, no matter who it is, we start them at the starting rate of our payroll at $22.50 per hour. So we'll still use somebody on staff. So we'll still make whatever current salary is, but when they are doing the payroll backup work, they would jump up to a $22.50 per hour rate. That keeps it a little cleaner, if that makes sense.
You're choosing one, I wasn't here, so I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
So you're choosing one person that will be trained to step in when payroll gets backed up, and
Not as much if it's backed up as if the current payroll person wasn't here for
Okay.
an emergency or
Okay.
something like
to
that.
keep it so it doesn't get backed up, so that's for the
Exactly.
opposite.
So people
Okay.
get their paychecks.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because right now, if our payroll something happened to our payroll person and she wasn't able to be here, we would get it done.
Personal
but it would
days
be
and,
brutal.
yeah,
Here and there.
yeah.
Do we have a person, I'm sorry, I'm sure we asked this.
We
We
have
have a
a-
person in mind?
We actually have a couple of people, so we do have a person in mind. But there's a couple of people who would be qualified to do it that have done it before.
We get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the addition of a payroll backup trainee, rate of $22.50 per hour, not to exceed 280 hours, totaling $6,300.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Buziak?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Contract with Little Heroes.
Any other questions about that?
Answered my questions.
We get a motion on that?
Move to approve the contract with the Little Heroes LLC for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Buziak?
Yes?
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
The motion passed.
And the personnel report. Anybody have questions about
Are they gonna be backfilled?
We hope so.
Because it's the only question.
this? Can we get a motion on this?
move to approve the personnel report as stated.
Second?
Do we need a roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Buziak?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
The motion passed.
All right, if there's no other additions, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Welcome back, everyone, to our Committee of the Whole meeting for Milburn School District 24. Roll call, please.
Ms. Boss?
Present?
Mr. Coleman?
Present.
Mr. Buziak?
Present?
Mr. Lorenzen?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Federini?
Present.
Ms. Roberts? Present.
Dispense with the pledge as we've already done it tonight. No public comments, it doesn't look like. Does anyone have any additions? All right, information and discussion about the board policies. Does anyone have anything special they'd like to bring up about these?
I did have just a couple things. For 470, I was just curious who attends to the resource conservation. Is that something we've addressed yet or to be determined?
What was your question?
Well, there might be a policy.
So who is it that is focused on resource conservation?
Oh, who is in charge of it?
Yeah, is that you?
That's the superintendent. So when we,
And
it
is it a team effort or is it,
could be, should be,
it seems like that would be a lot to try to attend to.
right. This policy is troublesome, so when you ask our attorneys what, this section is, for example, include the investigation of the feasibility of potential markets for other recyclable materials that are present in the district's waste stream or, and be designed to achieve before July 1st, 2020, which is in the past, at least a 50% reduction in the amount of solid waste that is generated by the district.
I made a note of that. That's quite a task.
How do you do that?
Well, yeah, I
And
mean,
what's the measurement? And what would the solid waste be that the district generates?
paper, right?
Paper. So we recycle all of our paper.
Yeah.
We have a recycling program.
Well, yeah, I think they were even saying not to recycle it, but to just reduce it, to make sure that we're, like, I was just thinking, and I do know that it's important to have a code of conduct, that's a lot of paper, like maybe we post it somewhere, like maybe we just take one more pause, maybe since we have a new buildings and grounds person, maybe it's like a teacher and maybe a parent, I don't know, just one more time just to ask questions, let people be curious, and think through other ways that I could cut back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, the
we can do that.
iPads really help, for sure, in cutting back.
I think a couple other things though, like with our technology, leftover technology, that gets recycled. So our tech department has a recycling company that they work with to make sure that none of that's going into the landfill. We make sure that we're buying furniture that will, last a while. So
Yeah.
we're going through companies that provide us with something that won't be junk within a year. So, and then in terms of energy conservation measures, we work with different energy consortiums as well to make sure that we're, cutting back on our electricity use and
The lights. That we
Right.
could
The
just-
lights
So
and
I
that,
do
yeah.
see that we're doing a lot, and I'm not saying, oh, we're lacking in this
Yeah.
area. It's just that I thought it was a good idea, just the concept of having someone that says, I'm gonna check in with these different departments and it's gonna just kind of be something that I'm curious about, that I am open about. I don't know, in the scheme of things, probably not even worth saying you're gonna put time and effort into it, but, I mean, it is our children's future.
But I think this is a good example of what's you're seeing with these new policies. To me, this isn't a policy, at least a 50% reduction in the amount of solid waste. That's not a policy. A policy would be a statement to investigate on a regular basis or continually try to improve the reduction in the amount of solid waste. But these really, I would encourage everybody to take a look at these. This is our first reading. And I think you would agree, these keep getting more and more and more specific. Where, you know, they're even using a date, this was introduced May, or at the top it showed it was introduced May 2022, which most or all of these were. And they're naming a date that you have to do this before July 1st, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing a date from the past. And again, I question the wisdom in that. And maybe if we look at something like this, it could be more effective if we say, at some designated interval, at this point in the year, that point in the year, you know, just investigate or call a consultant, right?
A broader,
Waste
yeah.
company, yeah,
That's
waste
more
companies will
specific.
come and they'll tell you, hey, look, we'd be happy to put recycling bins here or something, I don't know. But to put up to me, a solid number like that, it's not a policy.
Well, especially because we've already done so
It's a
much
mandate.
to address.
It's a mandate, yeah,
Right.
it's not a policy that would
Yeah.
govern continuous improvement or accommodate for changes in environment. And I really, again, like I say, encourage everybody to look at these because that's what I've seen since November, I think it was November 2021 was the last big round. And now here since May 2022, this has become increasingly
But we can amend
specific
those,
and-
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, they can be amended, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't.
That's
have
what I'm
to-
saying, so everybody, you know, take a
Somewhat.
look at these. What's that?
Somewhat. So this
As long
one,
as it's not in violation of law.
so this one, this is what I pulled up the press policy here. As an example, this
Yeah.
is saying that this has to be in the policy by
Oh,
law
it
that was
does.
passed on 7/18 of
See,
08.
and the statute encourages districts to investigate, see that? It's unclear about what year, baseline number that your district must use, determine whether it's, they're putting something out there that's not a policy statement, it's their mandate or their target. Whereas the statute says, it, just like I was saying, it encourages districts to investigate potential markets for these things. But what they're doing is more of an activism from their
Exactly.
position of authority rather than, you know, guiding policy.
And
Which I think can produce better results than having a, you know, a statement like that. That's a one-time shot.
And is this funded by the state in some way, shape, or form, or is this on our tax, this is on our tax?
It's an unfunded mandate.
So,
Well, I'm sure somebody was in there going, hey, we need to reduce consumption, and then somebody else said, well, you have to make it measurable, and so somebody said,
Right.
oh, let's make it 50%. And now it's required to be in there even though we're 2 years past the date that it's done.
And again, here's another example, it's not required to be in there.
It said in the
I
first
thought it
paragraph.
was.
No, take a look.
Everything in this paragraph is mandatory
Except
except
that the statute only encourages
But,
districts to investigate.
so we have to have the policy, but the policy doesn't have to actually tell us to do it.
Yes.
okay, so we just investigated it.
We are done.
So
You know-
that's good policy.
An
Investigate.
updated policy would be really good, because there's a lot of, you know, with changes in EV technology and
Absolutely.
solars and winds and all this other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Those are things we should be investigating.
Yeah. Right, so that less specific, but guidance and policy would produce better results than somebody else's activism type mandate here. And again, that may be a bit of an overstatement, but to me, that's activism when you start putting a solid number there, rather than saying what's in the
But
statute.
again, it looks like we can amend it then,
Yeah, absolutely.
so it's because of the
Absolutely.
word encourage.
Yeah, that's the.
So we could make it
exactly.
broader, more open, saying
That's-
that this is
yeah.
gonna be a policy that it's a goal for us. But
Yep.
we're gonna leave it more open-ended to where
Yes.
we're at as a
Say an
district.
annual review of potential improvement
Yeah.
and reduction.
I mean, I think our new building
Solid
ground
waste.
person could really be a good
Yeah.
asset in that area.
And absolutely. To me, that makes sense. That's a policy.
Do you wanna try and write something up for us, one of you guys, or somebody?
I'll give it a go,
Okay.
and then can I give it a go, and then I'll email it to
Yeah,
you, and then.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's one thing, as you read through these things, take a look at how they're noted. Is it required by law? And increasingly, specific things are required by law.
Any other questions or comments on any of these policies?
More out of curiosity, with 680 being about teaching about controversial issues, have we had any pushback with any issues? I mean, I feel like we're being pretty peaceful. And this is in there because other districts, right? And this is a basic
Yeah, we've had this in
policy.
there
So yeah,
forever.
so it's just in there, okay.
And the good thing about that one, I didn't find anything controversial about it.
No, that one, I looked at that one, I'm like,
It was good, it
I
was well
just saw
done.
that too, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well, it was
that one
broad,
actually
is what we were
seems
saying.
pretty good.
I would be fine adopting it as is. Yeah, I think it was well written and it was.
I wanted to add the word honoring the dignity, just because I think respecting people, it may be just too much nuance in my mind to make it worth an edit, but, I just, moving forward as, you know, things come up, I mean, I guess, no, just, it's not broken, don't fix it, so, I would just personally feel like you respect somebody, but you also give them the dignity of valuing, but again, that's probably more nuanced in my mind than it is in anybody else's.
Yeah, 540 is worth reading as well.
Well, I was thinking of monkeypox when I read that one. Hopefully that's gonna be,
And if not, that, wait for the next one.
no kindergartners kissing.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So these are, yeah, I'd say these are definitely.
Any others? FOIA request about, hey, refuse. That was an easy one to get.
Yeah, that was easy. I did want to point out on 7270 administering medicines to students that we will have to change. I have to determine whether or not we can obtain Narcan to have on staff. I don't know if we can get that. So one of the policies, these are void policies if we are unable to obtain some of these medications, like the epinephrine. If we can't get an EpiPen, an extra one, we do in both buildings. But opioid antagonist, which is most commonly Narcan. So if someone has an opioid overdose, we would administer Narcan and it could save their lives. All of our police officers in the area carry Narcan in their vest, so that we would likely be able to save someone if they respond quickly anyway. But for our nurses to have it under the extremely rare possibility that someone would overdose on opioids, we would have that available.
We're saying we won't be able to.
I don't know how we can.
Like
go
in what
about
licensing,
obtaining
yeah,
it.
and what,
Storage.
well,
there's all
yeah,
kinds
or
of
even like,
things.
can just any nurse, you have to have special training to administer it?
All
Like,
that.
Are there school resource officers here?
No.
Okay.
I like that question though.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
What?
Maybe for, future discussion. Resource officers.
Like my philosophy on resource
No,
officers,
but
or
to have a discussion as to whether heard
Police
at
at
one
school?
point that
Yeah.
that might be appropriate.
Well, and if all the local police carry that stuff, if you had resource officers, they would have it.
Yeah.
So then that would make this moot, you know?
Sure.
So,
Feel free to put it on the agenda
Yeah.
list or email me or Jason about it. We'll put it on the agenda list in the future.
Give that some thought, see if anyone else is interested.
And actually, that's where we are, so do you wanna put it on a list for a future agenda item or no?
I would be strongly opposed to introducing police into our education system.
see, I would think you would feel the opposite way
Really?
with all the stuff that's going on.
Well,
I mean, you literally like make the school safer by having a cop in each school.
well,
Let's not have the discussion.
yeah, I mean, we could.
We're
No,
not
we don't
gonna
have
get
to
into
make
that
it, but I
discussion
mean,
right
I think
now, we
it's
don't
a
have the
future agenda
time.
item.
Worth discussing, I think.
Safe, feeling safe,
Coming
who's
up
feeling
next.
safe, who's feeling at risk,
If you'd like,
Yeah.
if you have strong feelings one way or the other, let me know, we'll put it on a future agenda item.
I think it's gonna go on.
I think so.
Yeah,
All right.
I second that thought.
Next
Wow.
minute, at the
Apparently I'll lose.
committee of the whole meeting, we can put it on the agenda.
It's worth talking.
It is.
I have a question for Jason on one that we just discussed. In the void section,
Yeah,
the verbiage, and I had to look at the statutes, right? The 105 Hawaii code, right? 522, so, and they have these sections, F, 22-30, F, I have to take a look at that, but, I mean, some of this stuff, some liability on the school. I wonder if it's required by law, and if not, in the void policy, where it says, let's see, school district supply of undesignated asthma medication section of the policy is void whenever the superintendent or designee is, for whatever reason, unable to. To me, that says there's a burden of proof on the superintendent or designee to prove that they were unable to obtain these things. So I would like to
that's a
read
good,
that statute.
that's a good catch,
and-
and that's, I would take it out.
Yeah.
If we can't get it, that's why I asked the nurse.
Yeah, or designee is for whatever reason, or does not, for whatever reason, one obtain for the district. Because I think just that verbiage there puts a burden of proof on the school district to show that they were unable to. Maybe at one point you check, I mean, does that mean you have to check every day to see if there's a local supply of Narcan, or?
Yeah,
Right.
if we can't get it easily, we take it out.
So that's what.
It says that down low, John, on the.
Yeah, I think that's something we would definitely wanna change the
I
verbiage
don't wanna
on.
mess, I don't want it in there referenced at all if we can.
Yeah.
That was, I think that was to protect, let's say, the way I read it is, if there's a school district who had Narcan or wanted to, and then couldn't get it for whatever reason, they wouldn't be liable because they couldn't, or they ran out, or for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I
a
think the
little,
void,
it's a little goofy.
I think the void verbiage is good if it states, does not is unable to. I think unable to puts you on the hook.
I agree.
But I don't know if we can move to that. Maybe that's something the attorneys can confirm, or that could be something that can be construed by looking at the statutes governing this. I'll take a look at the statute. Because I just, again, what are schools best able to do? And what's the appropriate role for the schools?
Fair question.
And I do question that. Obviously, you wanna have things present to enable, the aid of the student, but you start painting yourself into a corner where you have to prove that, hey, we weren't unable to get an Narcan. That's pretty tough. We're in the business of education and the care of students. But to what degree are we able to do so? Yeah, so you see that standard verbiage right up front. The Illinois statute shall implement that. But again, as we just saw, when they wrote into policy a positive statement that you must reduce it by 50%, the waste, we find that the statute actually encourages you to look at ways to reduce waste. It doesn't mention a 50% reduction as a mandate, so. Again, another good example of these policies that are written, you really need to be careful.
Okay. Let's see our future agenda items with the addition of discussion of resource officer next month. Superintendent's report.
We have, in my board notes, talked about the safety plan, and we have to upload our threat assessment protocols to the ROE. They're requiring that, which is great. We have them in place, we revised them. We originally had them created in 2014, and Adam revised them with his group and committee this year. So Adam, do you want to kind of give a little synopsis of how those went?
Sure. Yeah, so back, in the end of 2019, Governor Pritzker signed a public act charging school districts to establish threat assessment teams to develop threat assessment protocol. So we established a team in early 2020, and they had specifics on what team members should be present. Law enforcement being present, administrators, social workers, psychologists. So anyway, we fulfilled that requirement, and that's January 2020. And we used some guiding documents to help us establish our protocol. We used the existing protocol that we already had, which was good. But we determined that it was all in one. So we were looking at it as, we call it harm to self protocol and harm to others. So we took the one document where it was merged together and we separated those two ideas out, created two separate protocols. We worked for a long time. We established a few different meetings, 2 to 3 hours at a time. We really dug into it deep and what I felt established a good protocol and everybody agreed on. So that was back in 2020, and then the pandemic hit just right after that. So everybody went remote, but we had some good protocol in place ready to use. Trying to think if there were any specific times where it was used during being remote. I think there might be a time or two where we had to address something using that protocol during the pandemic. But now, coming back, last year, after the tragedy in Oxford, Michigan, anytime a tragedy happens, we analyze it, we talk about it as an administrative team, and we reflect on our protocol. After that particular incident, there were a few things that occurred that were being talked about. We wanted to pull our team together right after that. So the administration, we debriefed with our social workers, and we determined, you know what, it's time, since now we're coming back out of the pandemic, let's get this team back together. So we reconvened in January of last year, and we reassessed and we revised a couple of areas of our protocol. And that's where we are today. So you guys saw that in Dr. Convenience. We have a protocol for harm to self, harm to others. We have assessment tools that we use for both of those situations. So when a situation arises, our social workers and our psychologists get to work on the situation right away. Administration's involved in oversight right away. So it's kind of a summary of where we've been over the last couple of years of establishing this new
Thanks. Appreciate it. So that'll be uploaded to the ROE this week. that's a new requirement that we do that. This year, we're gonna talk about, as a general idea, our administration had a 2-day retreat last Thursday and Friday where we got together and really focused on how we want to act as a team and interact with each other and what we're really trying to accomplish as a school district. We have been feeling for a while that this year is about building community, building connections within the district, because the pandemic has really separated people out from each other, and it's really, you can really see how that impacts people's ability to make connection and conversation and interact with others. So that's going to be important, and we're going to talk a lot about belonging. How do we make everyone in the district feel welcome, like they belong in the district? This is a public school where everyone is welcome, has a right to be here, and we want them to be fully engaged in our school district at least as much as they want. Maybe not fully as engaged as you all are as school board members, but fully engaged as parents, and that's important in our district, and I know you all believe that too. So we're working toward that. In addition, we're working on academics because that's why we exist as well. So we have academic goals that we're focusing on. We want our students to be better reading, better at writing, better at math. We work on that every year. We have some specific goals related to that. We want to see some improvement. So that's our main focus. Academics. Let's get our students to read gooder, and then we're going to focus on belonging and how do we build community, build connections with each other, and provide spaces for people to interact with each other here at school. Because when you look at the Lindenhurst Milburn community, one of the main gathering places is the elementary school, Milburn District, which has really over the years made it kind of unique and special because there's really nothing else holding us together. There's no downtown, there's no community. We come from Wadsworth and Lake Villa and Lindenhurst and unincorporated. There's nothing else here. And why would anybody pay these ungodly taxes if you didn't have the school? So the school is pretty important to us. And I know it is to you. I'm preaching to the choir, but we want to continue to build those relationships, those connections amongst people. Tonight, Jake was a little late, and for a good reason. He's building those connections. Ben had hosted new families here, so we invited new families to the district to come in today just to have a tour of the school, and teachers took them around. It's really cool. First interaction and connection with Milburn, and so we're trying to get to know them already, which is what we are all about, making them feel welcome.
How much of that is coordinated with the EPIC group?
Margaret was here tonight.
Okay.
Yep,
I know,
EPIC was
I
here.
know in the past we've had movie nights and,
Yep.
you know, you put on, you know, yeah, whatever. In the cafeteria, we come in, order pizza, everyone, at least before the pandemic, you know, and I think it would be appropriate if we brought that kind of stuff back.
Yep.
Just outside of school, just so
Yep.
we are a community and we don't just have to be for school.
Yeah. Yep. EPIC is definitely on board with those connections and more family events, hopefully this year. Keep people healthy and keep any pandemics away. That would help.
What about the socials they used to do at the middle school? Are those, I mean,
For the dance, like the
well,
activity nights?
Yeah, the activity nights, yeah, those were so sweet.
Jake would like to do them every Friday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it, Jake.
You're gonna have to know every
I
one.
was looking for volunteers, so thank you, board, for volunteering.
There you go.
We do 7.
So Epic used to sponsor those and staff those with volunteers.
Yeah.
And then there was also an interest from our student council to kind of do some of that too. So maybe this year they'll pair up and be able to offer some of those to
That'd be
kids.
cool.
Yeah.
Student led, that'd be really
Yeah.
cool.
I think you could enjoy the music of those things.
It's hilarious watching the kids.
It was a good time, it really was.
So that's what we've been up to. Looking forward to getting everybody back into the buildings. The buildings, it's nice to have a little break in the summer, but then the purpose of the building is not for us to fix it and clean it. The purpose is for kids to be in here and learning, so looking forward to that. Teachers were here today in this room. Our new teachers started their orientation 3 days this week. Ben, is it 3 days?
Every day they have
Every day. Every day they've got something. So they're here learning, getting involved. It's great. Having fun. That's all I got for now. It's Carly.
Carly?
All right, I am up. Okay, so, gonna try something a little bit different. When I think of the business office, I think of the 5 main functions under the business office. So we have operations and maintenance, building and grounds, transportation, human resources, food services, and finance, essentially. So what I did in this board report was broken out what's going on under these 5 areas and what's been going on over the last month or since the last time we met. And another thing I'm attempting to do in a small way, tying into building community, is putting some of the names of the people that are doing some of the bigger things under these functions. So we have about 50 people across the 5 functions that have different roles. So you will see some of our colleagues' names sprinkled throughout, just so you're familiar with them. To kick off with operations and maintenance, it's been very busy. As every summer is, this is the busy time to get a lot of stuff done. Our asbestos project completed actually late Wednesday, and our new flooring project here at the elementary school will be complete tomorrow. It looks really good. I don't have pictures, unfortunately. I wasn't here Thursday and Friday after the asbestos project cleaned up. But our custodians are working very hard to get everything ready back to school. Our roof replacement on the house, that was supposed to begin today. I saw the dump truck go there, but with the rain, I'm not really sure if it started, but it's supposed to be completed by the end of this week. And then just a huge shout out to Tim Smith. So he's our new director of building and grounds, and he is doing amazing things, looking for ways to fix things himself or with his staff, so that we're not outsourcing. So we're starting to save money here and there, even in little ways. But he's great to work with, and a lot of stuff is getting done, which is really exciting. And then along the same vein of building community, something that our custodians have been doing over the past several weeks, couple months maybe, is going through different training. So they've been getting together and having pizza and learning about cleaning supplies from our Home Depot rep and how to appropriately use them, or meeting with our insurance company representative to go over workplace safety. So just a reminder of how to get things done efficiently and stay safe. But they had a really good time getting together, and it was a really nice time. So transportation, tomorrow is our first meeting of the school year. We bid our bus routes. This is to show our appreciation for our longest tenured drivers. We have 18 amazing bus drivers. They're a really fun bunch. We're looking to hopefully hire one more, but for right now, we have our routes covered. Our private placement students we have covered with cabs if needed. Under human resources, Brandy Baird, she is the coordinator of business services, and we're starting to brainstorm a way to communicate benefits to our staff. This came out of a request from our teachers union to get additional education on benefits. So we're going to have a campaign that will be monthly. We'll cover a different benefit offering each month, probably starting maybe September, October for sure.
That is really smart, Carly. That's
Thanks.
great.
Thanks,
I
I'm
really
excited
like
for
that.
it. It's something I used to do in my old job, so I really like benefits communication because people don't know how to use them and they are an important part of their compensation. So
Yeah.
once you're fully
Yeah.
utilizing them, you're actually saving money. So that will be a fun thing to roll out to everyone, and that will be rolled out to the entire staff. Food services, as you know, we outsource to Arbor. We've ordered all of their smallwares to have ready to go before school starts. Push point, our point of service system, that's updated, ready to go for kids to use. And then last but not least, finance, the numbers of things. So Bonnie White, she's our payroll coordinator, and we started pulling all the documentation for this year's audit. We met with the auditor last Tuesday for an initial kickoff meeting, reviewing our internal controls, and everything went really well. So I think we'll have another successful audit. We covered the RFPs, and then last but not least, the budget. So this is budget season, and we will be reviewing the budget at the next board meeting on August 22nd. The very end there, we have a calendar which we have to adhere to according to school code. So basically, when we meet next time for the budget, what I've learned in my training for communicating budget is just to give you a short story. 3 sentences are about that, comparing to what our budget looked like last year. But I'm curious to hear what you would like to hear as well. We can go to the weeds a little bit, which is scary. You can really go into the weeds with a budget, but I'm always open to feedback. If anyone really wants to really understand something specific, whether it's the budget or anything at all.
Yeah, I think we just look for anomalies.
Okay.
You know, typically in the past.
Okay.
So, you know, the simple statements have been effective, I think, in the past. We look for anomalies, and then there are questions that have come about.
Okay.
Because to explain every single line item and explain all the columns and the transfer, the funds and the sources, they have great training for that, but at the conference, but it gets deep.
Right.
It gets deep, and with the grants, how they can be used. But yeah, I mean, there's always been good discussion in the past. We just look for any anomalies and what the future looks like.
Okay. All right, well, that's it for the business office.
Question.
Sure.
For HR, do we have a HR program, or are you using Excel and?
Oh, what do you mean, like a computer system?
Yeah.
So we have different computer software for different functions. So we have some applications under a company called Frontline for our recruiting, if you will, job posting. We use a software called Specialized Data Systems, SDS. That's both like our finance and our payroll system. It also houses some indicative data. I would say SDS is probably more of like our HR function. We don't have, do you have an example of
Well, I mean,
something
me
you've
and,
seen?
me and my company, we use Workday.
Yes. Yep.
And it has all information, and you can put, HR policies and so on and so forth in there.
Right.
I'm just curious, if we had anything comparable here in the.
No, we don't. I feel like that might be something that we see more in a corporate setting. Here it seems like it's chunked out. You could use, some school districts might use, say, more frontline applications to cover different, training or, different HR components. But the bulk of what we use is SDS and frontline. We don't have a one-stop shop.
Any other questions? board reports?
Thanks, Carl.
I will contact Bailey tomorrow. And I wanna thank Veronica again for putting out policies like that. I know that's a lot of extra work, but it's really great for facilitating them. It's
We're all caught up
fantastic.
now.
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic.
Do we want to adjourn for a closed session to talk about superintendent evaluation, or?
Yeah, I think we need to.
Okay, so, there's a motion, I make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Ms. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Buziak?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Board is in closed
Thank
session.
you, everyone, have a good night. Does anyone need to take a break?